lies or dropping truths. In my view, it's the same script of lies. Policymakers have lost the ability to reason, literally sold their countries for a song. Or should I say, the ability to reason has been overtaken by greed. Do you care for some truthful journalism? What happened to human rights, freedom of speech, free to choose what you want and what you don't want? Did you just cut me off?
What is government doing about that?
Did they just cut me off? At what point did they cut me off? Lest I remind you, we are at war.
I really am mad about the media. I mean, I spent my whole life there. My whole life. It was an honorable profession. It's not. It's part of the problem. The media are aligned with the people in charge to oppress the population of the United States through lying. Not just a part of the media, all the media. They're lying about the things that actually matter. And we'll have these fake debates about this or that, these little peripheral debates, but on the questions that actually matter, the economy and foreign policy, they're 100% aligned against the population of the United States. So that so deeply offends me that I thought we have to make an alternative. And the only way to do that is through a subscription service. Why? Because you cannot be dependent on advertisers, because advertisers will try to influence your output. So I'll tell you just one thing I learned. Okay, this is the sum total of the knowledge collected after 27 years in the business. Pharma ads are the #1 advertiser, pharma, on television. Right, left, center, doesn't matter. It's all pharma. How many people are actually asking their doctor for some drug they saw on television? So I asked someone who worked at pharma. Nobody. Then why are you spending billions a year to advertise in media? He goes, to prevent media from criticizing us. Oh, you're capturing the media through ad spending. It's not about the retail consumer. That's just a sideshow. It's about making sure that the executives of these news organizations never criticize pharma, the COVID vax, for example, period.
Well, this is Worldview. Thank you for joining me on the program today. I'm Yvonne Katsande, and let's talk about exposing the lies. So there is obviously something in human beings which responds to a totalitarian system. Human beings are compelled to live within a lie, but they can be compelled to do so only because they are in fact capable of living in this way. Therefore, not only does the system alienate humanity, but at the same time, alienated humanity supports this system as it owns involuntary masterplan, as a degenerate image of its own degeneration, as a record of people's own failure as individuals. And the lie has in fact led many so far from the normal society that one cannot even orient themselves any longer. Now, it's alarming the rate at which people now are so easily accepting to these lies. The lies of Big Pharma, the lies of the W.H.O, the lies of politicians, the lies of media, and even the lies of the deep church. Yet the Bible is there to guide with truths. Lying has always been used for political purposes. Lies actually cover up corruption, past mistakes, and hidden motives, and they are an essential ingredient in political campaigning. Well, sometimes, however, political lies take on a much more sinister form. The lies become all-encompassing, embrace all aspects of life, and in fact, every corner of society. Now, this occurrence is a sign that totalitarianism is rising. One political philosopher noted, totalitarianism at its essence is an attempt at transforming reality into fiction. It is the attempt of corrupt and pathological state actors to impose a fictional account of the world onto the entire population. In Nazi Germany, it was the idea of a superior race and an unclean people that formed the big lie. In the Soviet Union, it was the belief that state communism could work and that all could be made equal. And from this big lie trickled down a stream of endless little lies. In all this, millions, if not billions, lost their lives. Now the world lives with the lies of the deep state coming in different forms, like the lies of the so-called mainstream media. Well, even if I can name one, BBC, for example, almost certainly we are moving into an age of totalitarianism dictatorships, an age in which freedom of thought will be at first a deadly sin and later on a meaningless obstruction. The autonomous individual is going to be stamped out of existence. The political realities of many nations, past and present, truly reflect the works of the eugenicists. Now, through media wars, aid and policies, all these things happen. What I'm telling you is actually not utopia, but reality and truth. And today, I will show you some realistic examples. Now, in early 2023, the BBC did it again when it brought in a cardiologist who said the likely contributory factor to excess cardiovascular deaths in COVID mRNA vaccine and rollout should be suspended pending an inquiry.
I have great respect for NICE, but I think in this regard with statins, I think this guidance is misguided. And the reason I say that, W.H.O, is something I've managed thousands of people with heart disease in my career, prescribed statins, particularly to high-risk people. And I just want to, emphasize that people who've had a heart attack or high risk, that's where we see the greatest benefits of statins. But in this guidance, this basically applies to people who have a less than 10% risk. And if you have a less than 20% risk of having a heart attack or stroke in the next 10 years, and one thing that we always tell patients when I prescribe statins or discuss it with them is that there is, first of all, no what we call mortality benefit. They're not going to live any longer over a 5-year period. And that the absolute benefits for them is about 1%, 1 in 100 in preventing a non-fatal heart attack or stroke. So that informed decision-making needs to be part of the process in discussion with patients. And then help the patient make the decision themselves. In my own experience with W.H.O, when most patients are told this information, they actually say, "Doc, to be honest, I don't really fancy those odds. Is there anything else I can do?" And of course, the big issue really that's ongoing, which has been going on for years in this country, is that we've not been addressing unhealthy lifestyles, or certainly being effective in curbing unhealthy lifestyles. We have this big problem with the obesity epidemic. And when you look at heart disease, my own research has found this, is that the best way to prevent heart disease and even manage people with heart disease, whether or not they choose to take a statin, is actually through lifestyle changes. So what does that mean in simple terms? It means...
So that was a big blow for BBC, though, after they denied that COVID-19 vaccines were not killing people. They brought in the wrong guest. And guess what? They tried to downplay it, they tried to deny it, but this is BBC we're talking about. Who really trusts them? So the question I have is, will 2024 see an increase in the number of regrets from those who took the mRNA vaccine? Emphatically, yes. This was a 5 to 7 year plan for death and disability. Immediately, months later, 1 to 2 years, and of course 5 to 7 years later. So the world is about to witness the worst. Just like Pastor Chris warned, the formula in this shot changes all the time. Now today I have a special guest to dive and delve deeper into the lies of media, the so-called mainstream legacy media, and why there's so much censorship around the truth. And joining me via video call this afternoon is John Mappin. John is a geopolitical commentator, a media group owner, a businessman who has been vocal about the deep state agenda in pushing a new world order, especially on the killer shots, that is the mRNA vaccines. Well, John, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm a big fan of Southern Africa, and I'm one of the people that believes that the next great civilization will probably emerge from Southern Africa. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job down there, and well done for standing up for the truth.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. We have to stand down for the truth. And let me tell you, Southern Africa is absolutely beautiful. In fact, I did extend an invitation. I said, when you're ready to come, let me know. I'll show you the most amazing places that Africa has to offer.
Well, thank you. That's actually, funny enough, this must be a sign, because this is the second invitation I've had to Africa in the last week. So I'm sure I will be coming down there.
Oh yeah, we'll be waiting for you. Come along. It's really great down here. But let's talk about the fake lies of this so-called legacy mainstream media. But let me start by asking, like, really, what world do we live in today? So much deception, though. What's your take on the push for a new world order, whether it's in climate change, in the deadly vaccines, in surveillance, in people being banned speaking the truth, totalitarianism at large? What's your take on that?
Well, essentially, there is a battle that is occurring in the world today. And first and foremost, it is a spiritual battle between those beings that believe that you are the best person to make your own decisions, and other people that believe that they are the best person to make decisions for you. So one set of people believe that you are sovereign, that you should have power of choice, that you have the freedom to choose. And the other group of people believe that your freedom should be limited, and that a government or a non-governmental body is actually more expert than you are concerning the decisions that you make for yourself. Now, if you step back and you take a look at really everything that is occurring in the world today, you will see that we are witnessing the results of that battle between what some are now calling a multipolar society and others are calling a unipolar society. Now, of course, Africa, this goes back a very, very long way with Africa, because at its very origins, Africa has always been a multipolar society. You've had many different groups, many different tribes, many different cultures within Africa.
Yeah.
But each one of those cultures, in its own right, was sovereign. And then, of course, you had the period of empire, which I'm afraid to say the British are quite guilty of in Africa. And the whole idea was really, in essence, is that the British know better than your average African, how the average African should lead their lives. And of course, this continued for a very long time until really only a couple of decades ago, really, where most of Africa has said, actually, I think we can probably get on without being told what to do, and we would like to be sovereign, which is well done, Africa.
Yeah.
However, in other parts of the world, and in fact, karma is a very interesting thing, nations that were originally sovereign, such as Britain and the United States, have now fallen into a trap of their own slavery, and they have become part of this program. And so it's rather ironic that in Russia today, people are freer than they are in the United States. In Africa today, people are freer than they are in the United Kingdom. So really the pendulum of what I would call common sense has swung entirely in the direction of Africa. And you can see this from the emergence of the BRICS countries. I was, fortunate to get to know some of the members of the Foreign Office from Russia recently. Yeah. And it's most interesting to note that just how free places like Moscow are. And of course, when you speak to people in Southern Africa, you realize that actually the people there are really coming up the scale into a very self-determined, very sovereign state. Now, of course, the enemy to that idea, they're fighting back. And that's what we're witnessing. And whether it's vaccines or lockdowns or the genocides that are occurring either in Ukraine or in Gaza at the moment, these are all really manifestations of this battle that is going on. Yeah. That's how I see it.
Well, it's interesting that you actually speak about Moscow. I was in Russia last month actually covering the elections there. And when I gave my report, I said, I'm on the ground and I'm talking about what I am seeing. True to the fact, it is freer than you would be in the United States or perhaps in any other European country. And a lot of people might find that hard to believe because of the fake media news that has come out there to kind of like just change the dynamics of who they really are. But let's talk about...
You're absolutely right about that. We have family in Russia. And I had a report from one of our uncles the other day who was part of the election process. He said, there's never been such overwhelming support for Russia's leadership. And the elections are completely bona fide. Of course, the usual suspects over here claim these were not good elections. But you were there, you saw it. I have family there, they witnessed it. You're right.
Yeah. Now, do you believe that the mRNA shots, let's talk about these mRNA shots and even the Holocaust, the vaccine Holocaust that we're witnessing in the world today. Do you believe the mRNA shots are causing sickness and killing people?
Well, I was very fortunate at the very beginning of the pandemic, or the so-called pandemic, because I think it's really arguable as to whether or not it actually qualified as a pandemic. But I got to know the actual inventor of mRNA, which is a fellow called Dr. Malone. And I got to know him rather well. He came to stay as my guest in London. I presented him to a group of MPs in London. And at the very early stages, we were trying to educate the local politicians here. Of course, they didn't really want to know because many of them were complicit already in what had occurred with the vaccines. But he told me that there is absolutely no way at all that mRNA should be put anywhere near a human body. Initially, this was a technology that was developed by the military so that in the event of a biological attack, they might have a delivery system that would allow a very rapid vaccine response. And that was the initial idea of the development of mRNA, which he was very heavily involved in. But they very, very quickly found out on their animal testing, they tested these mRNA vaccines on a bunch of ferrets. All the ferrets died. Oh. And it became very obvious that they developed cancers and various other different body anomalies. And it became very obvious that mRNA is a completely inappropriate delivery platform. Of course, there is no question that we are witnessing a slaughter, really, of millions of people will die as a result of having taken these vaccines.
Yeah.
Now, they die immediately or whether they die faster than they should do otherwise. I certainly know, obviously I have many friends that did get vaccinated, and several friends of mine have now died suddenly. I have at least, Irina and I have at least 3 family members that have precipitated cancer far sooner than one would have expected, really. And when they did precipitate cancer, it came very, very quickly. I also was I got to know Dr. Malhotra,
yeah,
and I got to know several cancer experts who, from the very, very beginning, were saying these vaccines were seeing an increase in the number of cancers. So I think there's no question that a mass slaughter has been perpetuated. And to be honest, I'm very sad to say, I think we're only about a third into it.
But what really would be the reason, though, John? What really would be the reason behind all this unreasonable eugenics? I mean, why do we have the rise of killing people, depopulating this agenda so much in the faces of the people, literally every day, whether it's in the food that we eat, whether it's in the climate, whether it's in the mRNA vaccines? It's like anything is just purposed to depopulate the world. What's really behind this?
If you really want a straight answer to that, you have to blame, I'm afraid, again, the British. Because there was a British philosopher called Malthus, who basically came up with the idea. It's called Malthusian philosophy. You can look into it, have a little bit of a Google. And he was, in very early days, he came up with this idea that the world is overpopulated. And there are too many people, and we will be running out of food. I think at that time, I think population was less than 1 billion in the world. The problem is that Malthus, in the way that people, my definition of brainwashing is is if you accept information without personally inspecting it for yourself. And the education systems lend themselves. We teach in our universities, we say, well, listen to this authority, because this fellow's got some letters after his name. We have to accept what he says as true. And Malthus became the philosophical authority to a number of people. And so when you go off to university, the idea that the world is overpopulated and that we don't have enough resources is the predominant view amongst, for want of a better word, the billionaire class. If you speak to the average billionaire, they believe that the world is overpopulated and we have a scarcity of resources. Well, the truth of the matter is we are underpopulated and we have too many resources, and there is no scarcity.
Absolutely.
Scarcity is an enslavement myth. And the truth of the matter is life is abundant. Even
Absolutely.
in Cornwall, I'm speaking today from Cornwall, which is in the West Country of England. I'm sitting here at Camelot Castle, and Cornwall is a relatively small county in the UK, but if you fly over it, there's a tremendous amount of land. Now, try flying over Africa or Russia or Kazakhstan, where my wife is from.
Yeah.
You will see huge tracts of completely and utterly undeveloped land and an abundance of resources. What we have is a mismanagement of population and a mismanagement of resources. And that, of course, is a different subject.
Yeah.
And you could say that, there is a mismanagement going on. But
that is the same story. That is the same story when you come to Africa. We have swathes and swathes of large lands everywhere. You drive any part of Africa, you fly over any part of Africa. We have open lands and rich lands too. And I ask myself, so why do they keep saying Africa is overpopulated? It really doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, no, but also if you study the propaganda on Africa, if you look at most modern maps, they're scaled incorrectly. Africa is actually far, far bigger than it looks like on a map.
Yes.
So there has been a cabal of individuals who have had an agenda, and it probably is a racist agenda, to be fair, to minimize Africa and to make less of Africa. And my great blessing was, I've been a pretty religious man growing up. I was born to the Church of England.
Okay.
But the great blessing I had is I was in America once, and I came across the works of L. Ron Hubbard. And I don't know if you've ever looked into what he's had to say about Africa, but he was he proposed the first ever one man, one vote constitution for Rhodesia. Yes. And of course, you should have seen what the British establishment tried to do to him. As soon as he proposed one man, one vote in Rhodesia, the then Smith government came to him like a dose of salts, and they revoked his visa and ordered all sorts of investigations worldwide. But there is a tiny group of people who really wish to suppress and put the common man down. And nowhere has this been more keenly felt in the world than in Africa. Yeah. And currently, these people are attempting to do the same thing with Russia and with a number of the BRICS countries, actually. So the difference is that we now have these independent media platforms. And of course, we launched our Camelot Castle TV. You've launched your, I think you have a terrestrial television channel over there. Yeah. And that's marvelous. Yeah, that's marvelous. And the truth of the matter is that word is getting out. There is another breakthrough which is a very interesting silver lining, and that is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really is a bolt from the blue. This is something that the world banking system simply did not anticipate. And funnily enough, I was in Switzerland last week, and I was shown an invention from Southern Africa, which will prevent the censorship in media.
Oh.
Because it assigns digital rights to a sovereign blockchain. And this is a very, very interesting thing, because
That's a major breakthrough right there.
The major breakthrough, and it's a Southern African breakthrough, you'll be glad to hear. And that's one of the reasons why I was invited to Southern Africa. So I'm still looking into it. It's a bit early to say that it's a sure thing.
Yeah.
But the very concept of it, the idea that, for instance, a film or your TV show, right now, you're having to use distribution systems.
That's why they can't censor me for anything, because we have our own platforms fully owned by our own people, and there's nothing they can possibly do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fantastic. Now imagine if you could place your show onto the blockchain and receive remuneration for that show as it spreads out across the world. So the whole point is that what Bitcoin has done for currency and what it's done for store of value, it may be possible to be able to do that. And that would completely prevent the censorship and the propaganda programs.
Yeah. Now, yes, John. Now, talking about censorship, actually, were there instances where censorship during COVID-19 was actually deemed necessary for public safety? And if so, what were they?
Well, it was vicious. I mean, I was censored. I was doing a show every night on Facebook, really just to inform people as what was going on. We had hundreds of thousands of people tuning in.
Yeah.
And all of it, from one day to the next, my account was suspended, simply because I suggested that there was a cure for COVID. And I'd seen COVID, I'd seen it cured by, I became very good friends with Dr. Zelenko, who was the person, he introduced this thing called hydroxychloroquine and zinc, which amongst his patients, he was curing a lot of people from COVID. But that's the last thing that the government wanted to hear about before the vaccine rollout. You see, he had this cure before the vaccine rollout. There were a number of people that stood to make a considerable amount of money.
Did he have the information prior? Did he have information prior to the vaccine rollout that there was something of that nature coming out, and therefore he had his own methods of healing it?
He spoke to Mike Meadows about it, funnily enough, and this is the thing that Trump announced. My own doctor in London, funnily enough, had a very well-known celebrity patient. I won't say who it was, but she was married to one of the biggest media owners on the planet, and she called my doctor in London very, very early on. She said, the Chinese have a cure. They use hydroxychloroquine and zinc. And my doctor prescribed a whole load of it for myself and for anybody that does. And of course, what was interesting is this young lady said to him, well, I'm going to be calling President Trump to tell him about it this afternoon. And of course, she did. And then Trump announced the cure.
And it was banned.
All hell. Yeah, it was absolutely banned. And you see, so human beings, sadly, they think that by being dishonest, they're acting in their best interest. In the long run, it's the worst thing that a human being can do, is tell either little or big lies. It's not a good idea. But in the case of the vaccination program, there were a lot of people that were going to profit from it. You know, I have a friend who was seriously damaged within a few days of taking the vaccine, and it's a tragedy. But of course, censorship was one of the big tools, and the way we were manipulated, there's a word that almost makes people stand to attention. And if you hear somebody using it, generally there's some chicanery associated to it, or to trickery. And it's the word safe. For your own safety. And the minute you use the word safe, it's like a sort of hypnotic button that's been installed on us. It's like a sort of, if we were robots, it would be like the stop button. Are you sure that's safe, Doug?
And if so, where's the backing data that shows that it's actually safe? I think that's one of the biggest questions that we've all had when it came to the mRNA vaccine rollouts. Now we've got mRNA in malaria, mRNA in COVID, mRNA in food. What is the backing data that it is safe? I've spoken to a lot of experts, even including Dr. McCullough. I've spoken to quite a lot of them, even in America, you know. Dr. Pierre Corey was on my program the other time. I said, Dr. Pierre, what really is the meaning of safe? Do we still trust the word for what it is? Or by the time you hear safe, you have to run for your life? And to this very day, we still don't have sufficient data, in fact, no data at all, to back or support the safety, the efficacy of all these vaccines. And then you speak about Facebook. I'm sure there were quite a number of other social media platforms that were censoring people, even including legacy media. Can we talk about that? I was very disappointed at how BBC has handled themselves over the past few years, and especially even in recent time, in terms of suppressing the truths about the mRNA vaccines, the truths about this global agenda, the deep state agenda. What's your take on that? What efforts did they actually roll out, and how effective were they in suppressing the truth?
Well, they were very effective, but it's more sinister than that. You see, I grew up in a little town in Switzerland, which happens to be it's just by coincidence I grew up there, but it happens to be the home to many billionaires. It's a little alpine village. And 2 years ago I was there, and the doctor in the local town showed me the list of those billionaires in the town, many of whom owned media groups, newspapers, television channels, Big Pharma. And guess what the list was? The list was all their vaccine exemption certificates. So these people knew that the vaccine was lethal. They didn't want their children to receive it. And at the same time, there's a number of people there whose children did get vaccinated. And now these people have now worked out that their friends knew that it was lethal, and they are absolutely furious with their neighbors. So the truth of the matter is that it's not like the people in charge in this world didn't know that the vaccine was lethal. But then again, there's some people who you think were in charge who didn't know they did take the vaccine. Like, I sincerely believe, a lot of people say the British royal family didn't take the vaccine and they were given a fake. I don't believe that at all. I believe that they did take the vaccine, and that I think that the vaccine contributed to the early death of Prince Philip, of Her Majesty the Queen.
Are we seeing the cancer? The cancer it could be coming from the vaccine?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've not examined her, and I've not seen her medical records, but you know, the fact that the King now has cancer, the fact that Kate Middleton is clearly not well, you know, and I feel terrible for them. You know, these are lovely, you know, I'm sure, you know, on a sort of a family level, these are nice people. But there are certainly people, to my knowledge, that did know that the vaccine was lethal. So you have really two camps. You have those people that are ruthlessly willing to implement an agenda of global suppression. And they know exactly what's going on. You know, these people know exactly who planned what's occurring in Ukraine. They know exactly who planned what's going on in Gaza. And rest assured, it's not what the mainstream media is telling you.
Yes.
So there is, without question, an agenda to depopulate. And I suppose, really, and this speaks to your work, we are in a race against how quickly we can wake up the average individual. Because, listen, I know that you know what's going on,
Yeah.
and you know that I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
The real skill is how rapidly do we assist. And funnily enough, I bumped into Candace Owens in London last week.
Okay.
Who, remarkable black lady from America. She has been tremendously outspoken about vaccines.
Yeah.
And she is on a very, very interesting trajectory, because she is actually really getting to the root of what is going on. And I advise anybody watching this to subscribe to her on Twitter. And she's a remarkable young lady. And there are a number of people that are working really against the clock to help the average person free themselves from the trap that we've all, to some degree, fallen into.
Yeah.
You know, the method of brainwashing that they used. So it's not just censorship. It's the fact that people willingly complied. And what caused them to willingly comply? Well, these people have been exposed to military-grade hypnotic weaponry that was actually designed.
How sad is that, honestly? So sad.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying, how sad is that? Imagine that. People have died, people have lost their lives, people have disabilities, injuries because of that exposure to this military-grade mRNA vaccine?
Well, it's a military-grade mRNA vaccine, yes. But the other thing that has been used against people is military-grade hypnosis programs. You know,
Okay.
these, you know, it is possible to create a mass hypnosis. You know, you see magicians can do this, or stage hypnotists can do this in a theatre audience. Well, in a broader sense, the media has been using hypnotic technology. And frankly, it's only because I am a highly trained Scientologist and that I've studied the works of L. Ron Hubbard that I was able to see through it. You see, I was able to...
Okay, go ahead, John. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
I was very, very blessed, because I was one of the first people in the Western Hemisphere to be thoroughly briefed on the subject of Scientology. And of course, if you take a look at the deep state attack on L. Ron Hubbard, that is at a whole other level.
Yeah.
It makes it on Trump seem like a sort of teddy bear's picnic. But the fact of the matter is, what is it that L. Ron Hubbard discovered? He discovered how to de-hypnotize human beings, how to undo the deep state programming. And he immediately became a threat to the deep state. Now, he released his first book, which was Dianetics, in 1950. And, you know, from 1951, the deep state were all over him and were trying to, and if you read Dianetics, you would immediately understand why. His second book, Science of Survival, he exposed the MK Ultra CIA hypnotic programming tool being used. And he was the first person to expose that in writing. So when I was 27 years old, happened to be in Hollywood and became curious about why Tom Cruise and John Travolta were Scientologists. So I walked in the front door and I said, could you tell me what it's all about? And I found out. And so when you study Scientology, you learn the methods that are used to hypnotize the general population. And once you've seen a magician's trick, you can see through it. And so I was very blessed to be able to see through this. But the average person, like I have family members still to this day who do not realize that they were hypnotized, And if they were offered another COVID vaccination,
they'll go
they
for
would
it.
take a delight.
Wow. Now, John, let me just, this is amazing. You know what you're saying right now is truth that the whole world needs to hear. Are you saying that this hypnosis is actually being used through media?
Yes.
So we have
those people that are building and creating media programs have been trained, knowingly or unknowingly, in hypnotic techniques. And I alluded to one of them, the idea of constantly repeating the word safe, safe, safe. It's for your own
Oh my goodness.
safe. And what that does, as soon as you use that word, you're sort of, you look at things in a different way. You look at things in a different way. It lulls you into a false sense of security. You know, somebody gets on the TV and just says, you know, it's all for your own safety. We just want the best for you. And then after they've said that, they deliver a complete lie along the lines of, now, this vaccine has been tested thoroughly, which of course we know that it wasn't. In fact, no vaccine on the market today has been subjected to proper
testing.
Blind.
That's it. That's it. Now, what you're speaking about, hypnosis, censorship, media, does this speak to, okay, in fact, let me ask this as a question. So if any country is allowed to censor content for all countries, which is what we're seeing in Australia. Remember, Australia has an e-safety commissar, and it's demanding that what is to stop any country from actually surveilling. I mean, this whole e-safety, we were questioning it. We said, what exactly is the purpose? Does it fall also under what you're speaking about, hypnosis, changing how people think and see things?
Well, listen, there's two subjects. One is the physical censorship of data, and that is a legal matter between governments and media companies. And one could argue whether or not censorship is right. I am absolutely against it. I'm a complete free speech absolutist on any subject, because I believe that human beings are quite capable of discerning for themselves what is true and what is not true. So let the chips fall where they may. That's my position on censorship. Now, the other subject that we're talking about here is a technology of mass hypnosis or individual hypnosis. And what you find is that ideas and concepts and belief structures can be altered to give people a mindset that renders them vulnerable to essentially, for want of a better word, I'm sorry to swear on your show, but being bullshitted to, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, we could say, isn't it surprising? See, there's two things that are surprising me. One, obviously, that somebody would actually dish out a vaccine that is deadly.
Yeah.
Two, that people accepted it. Now, I don't know which I'm more surprised about. The fact that our leaders, in fact, I'd almost say I'm more surprised. I expect our leaders to poison us with Big Pharma because they've been doing it for years. You know, all of the antidepressants that they put out, the Ritalin for the children. You know, we've witnessed Big Pharma being evil for years. What really surprised me is ordinary, intelligent human beings going along with it all.
That's it. I asked the question in a symposium. I asked a question in a town hall, in a symposium that I had. I said, first and foremost, where were the doctors? Somehow they could have seen that something was definitely wrong. Why didn't they sound the alarm right at the word go?
Yeah, and that is my point. They've been hypnotized. So what we've all got a lock on now is, yes, the vaccines were poisonous. We're seeing the results in people's bodies. They're getting cancer. They're dying. Footballers are keeling over with heart attacks at a rate that we've never seen. So we understand that. What people have missed, the missing ingredient here, is the fact that the bad guys, we could say, have also been using a technology of hypnosis and this staggering fact. Why did more doctors not speak out? Why is it that it's literally, I could count the doctors that have spoken out on two hands? Dr. McCullough, Dr. Malone, we all know their names. But think of it, think of how many doctors there are in the world. So why have they not spoken out? And the answer to that is these doctors have been hypnotized, the politicians have been hypnotized, and it is a very, very insidious weapon. Hypnosis is a very, very real thing. And when you use military-grade hypnosis, it is something else. And it is a form of mental propaganda, and this is what has been used.
And who is sponsoring this, John? Who's sponsoring the media that has now been trained to practice this hypnosis on the population of the people? Who's writing these scripts?
Well, you just asked a question that is the big question. Who is the planner in all of this? And you'll forgive me if I don't name the planner.
Okay.
You'll forgive me if I don't. But suffice to say, there is a planner. And if you start looking down the lines of who uses psychiatry and psychology as a political weapon, and who started doing that, you want to look into the history of psychiatry. In fact, in Southern Africa, there was a great history of the British using psychiatric camps to remove political opponents. There's a very, very interesting organization called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. And if you go to their website, it's cchr.org, you will start to get the answer to that question. But it's really something that takes a little bit of study, and for me to just name, well, it's Fred. You really need to understand the mechanism of hypnosis and how it is that an individual's will can be subjugated. What does it take to destroy a person's freedom of choice and their power of choice? And that, of course, was the subject of the book Dianetics that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. And it's a very, very interesting book. And if anybody is really interested to find out how to either dehypnotize themselves or help others get dehypnotized, I would strongly recommend reading the book Dianetics, because the answer is in that book. And as you start to understand the mechanism, as you start to see why is it that perfectly ordinary, sensible people, even after they had, like I met somebody the other day, he had 2 jabs. The second jab put him in hospital. He's a totally rational insurance broker. There was no reason for him to get the 3rd jab.
He went for it.
He went for it.
Wow.
He's a nice guy. On any normal day, I would say this guy is the least brainwashable person. He's well-educated, well-born, wealthy.
Oh no, let me tell you, the well-educated people literally let the world down. We were asking, where are the experts? What happened to the professors? What happened to the researchers? It's like none of them were even vocal, none of them even had the boldness to come and speak, even to this very day. Now, you raised a point.
They have been hypnotized, you see. What the subject that we haven't really addressed.
They've been trained to be like that.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying they've now been trained to be like that, so they can't even speak the truth anymore.
Well, of course, now they are stuck because some people are starting to wake up, but they realize that even some people in the alternative media, who coerced people to get the vaccine, well, now they realize that the vaccine is killing people, so they're compromised. Some people are saying they could be legally liable.
Of course, and I was actually going to get to that point, that who is going to pay for it? Who's going to compensate? But before I actually get there, you raised a very interesting point. I didn't think I'll even ask you this question today, but when you spoke about the hypnosis and how certain people have actually been trained to target the population, are we going to see a rise in concentration camps? I mean, it was called concentration camps then, but when we were during the time of COVID, remember they said that they were taking people into certain places so that they could get treatment, and then obviously we were in lockdown, but it looked like it was a setup for some concentration camps. What's your take on that?
Well, life improves bit by bit, or it gets worse bit by bit.
We saw that in New Zealand and Australia, actually.
So to answer your question, if you go down the road of enslaving your fellow man, how far south does that road go? If you go down the road of freeing your fellow man, how free can a human being be? It's unlimited on both sides of that equation. And we are in a battle between people that want to free their fellow man into a sovereign existence, into a multipolar world, and we are fighting against people that want to enslave man, because these characters believe that you and I are not capable of making our own decisions, that left to our own devices we're dangerous, and that we be thoroughly controlled and kept on a leash. Now, how big of a leash does it need to be? And unfortunately, you're right, it goes a very long way. But, we already have concentration camps in the world today. Gaza is a concentration camp.
It is, actually. Yeah,
Gaza is it. So are we going to have concentration camps? We already do have concentration camps. Now, the question we have to ask is, do we end up with more concentration camps? Some people would argue that London has changed in its character.
How so?
A lot. Now that I talk to, I grew up in London. I was very blessed to grow up in a nice house in the centre of London. I question as to whether I would like to live in London today. I don't mind doing your business meeting in London, but I question as to whether I would like to bring up a family there, because the level of violence and policing needed to control that violence. So at what point does life become a concentration camp? Are we in a concentration camp when all of your money is on a central bank digital currency, and somebody can work out whether you're buying an airplane ticket to fly off to a Trump convention, and of course you can't buy the ticket because anybody with supportive views of Trump becomes a threat to those that are running the cage. So, of course, you are right to be very, very worried about that. And we are involved in a race, really. Yeah. And from what I have seen, the missing piece of the puzzle is for people to understand the degree to which mass hypnosis techniques have indeed been used on them.
Wow! My mind is blown away by this. I never would have thought about hypnosis until you mentioned it.
Well, it's a very, very powerful tool. Funnily enough, in Africa, witch doctors actually would control tribes in Africa through a mixture of pagan religious practice and hypnosis. And some of the dance routines that they would do around a sick person has a great deal to do with hypnosis. They mixed the methods of hypnosis into other spiritual practices. And when you understand the mechanism of hypnosis and how easy it is actually to hypnotize a goodly number of the population, you will start to realize this. But I say, I was uniquely blessed. I was 27 years old, and I think I'd read some of the negative media funnily enough, I think it was in Time magazine, which is known not to be particularly reliable when it comes to the truth. And I read an article in Time magazine, and it was about Scientology. And I thought, it can't be, that is just too extreme to be true. And so I walked in the front door and bought this little book, Dianetics, which explained why mankind had gotten into this situation. And it was the most remarkable thing. And of course, it's been a great blessing for me because I was able to see through it. So thankfully, I managed to avoid being hypnotized, so I didn't get a vaccine. None of my family got the vaccine.
Thank God for that. Now, John, because of, in the interest of time, actually, I'm going to have to round up the program. But before I actually do so, I want to just ask this question. What exactly then should happen to compensate those families who took the vaccines? The ones that are now living with disability, the ones that even have their loved ones who have passed on because they actually took the vaccine as a result of media cohesion, media that has come to light because of this whole hypnosis thing that you've just, explained to us. So who's going to compensate? Who's going to be held accountable?
Well, ultimately, first thing we need to do is to help anybody who has been vaccinated to detox the body. When the vaccine goes into the body, it starts to produce spike proteins.
Yeah.
And those spike proteins zero in on a person's weakest organs, and they cause problems wherever the body is weakest. So if they were about to get cancer, they'll get cancer faster. If they're about to have problems with their lungs, they'll have problems with their lungs faster. If they're about to have kidney problems, they'll have kidney problems faster. So it accelerates any degrading of any tissue that is already degraded in the body. So the first thing I advise anybody to do is to find a really good detoxification program and to detox the body. And there are a number of things. I've tweeted out several detox programs. Anybody wants to follow me and DM me on Twitter, okay. I will send you the contact details. Obviously, all of that you do in, I'm not giving any medical advice here. Okay. You do this in conjunction with advice from a doctor that understands that the vaccines are toxic.
Yeah, of course.
But yes. Definitely detoxify the body. So if you've been back, but for those families that have been damaged, they certainly have compensate from the government.
Absolutely.
And we need to see justice. Anybody in the media who promoted the vaccine should be put on trial.
Yeah.
That's
I agree with you.
And the punishment should be commensurate with what they did.
Yeah.
Because their advice has, and their coercion has killed people.
Yes.
And
true.
To me, it's either murder or attempted murder, certainly manslaughter. I personally believe that there should be trials and there should be justice. It's very, very important for any society to there is justice.
Yeah.
And so far, I don't believe that those people that have had loved ones that have died from the vaccine believe that they have experienced justice or will experience justice. And that, of course, when a society starts to accept, oh, well, there's no justice really, then you just get a free-for-all and society degrades again.
And so that's a danger. And that's an absolute danger. You know what, John? I really would love to speak to you again. I think we've got a whole lot more. The time that we have is not even enough for us to actually have an in-depth expose of everything that we wanted to talk about. So I think I'm going to reach out to you again, and we can maybe take this to another level, answer some of the other questions that we were not even able to take today. I hope that will be okay with you.
Be fine. It's a pleasure talking to you, by the way, and well done for creating this extraordinary oasis of truth in the middle of Africa. It's Africa is the great hope for this civilization. Actually, I don't think it quite realizes it yet, but it is the great hope.
Thank you so much for being on the program with me, John. Like I said, we'll do this again. Obviously, we have to have a part 2 of this. It's very important that we let the people know the truth. Unlike the lies that are being spread by the so-called legacy media and the lamestream media, if I should call them, because they've caused ill information, and ill information leads to death. So, John, thank you so much once again for joining me on Worldview today.
Thank you. And of course, they have been hypnotized. And we need to get to the root of that.
We have to. We have to. All right, then. Okay, so that was John Mappin there joining me today on the program. I really like truth. You know, truth is amazing. It saves lives. And truth just speaks to a person's spirit and soul. And that's exactly what we need media to do instead of actually telling people lies. Do you know how many people have died? Do you know how many people are suffering from injuries right now? Do you know how many people don't even know what the truth is right now in this world? It's amazing, but it's a reality. The very people doing this are going to wake up one day to a world full of corruption and crime that will affect them too. And that's for sure. But they don't care because they have lost touch with God. They are lost people. In today's world, the lie has become not just a moral category, but a pillar of the state, the deep state, that is. Life in the system is so thoroughly permeated with hypocrisy and lies because the regime is captive of its own lies. It must falsify everything. It falsifies the past, it falsifies the present, and it falsifies the future even. It falsifies statistics. So here's my advice to you. Seek God while you can still find him before it's too late. Well, that's all I have today on Worldview. Thank you for watching. I'm back again tomorrow, same time, as I continue to view the world.
Bad journalism is incompetence. The media is dead. They are paid to lie.
There's something wrong in the newsroom.
The game is over.
They are targeting people, including medical teams as well as Arab speakers.
This was a Hamas statement.
They're paid to lie.
We said that medical teams and Arab speakers were being targeted. This was incorrect.
It was propaganda. Their control has been lost.
There's something wrong with the editorial direction.
We accept that this was poorly phrased and was a misleading description of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations.
The media spoke. You knew somebody was talking.
Have a look at how Elon Musk exposes the same sort of lazy narrative spinning by a BBC journalist.
6 months. Okay, so then you must have at some point seen the you hateful content. I'm asking for one example. Right. You can't give us a go on. And I'm saying, I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
This is how they covered that massive explosion.
It's hard to see what else this could be. And we expect them to tell us the truth because they've done it for 50 or 60 years. Other than an Israeli airstrike.
November 15th, BBC apologizes for misreporting.
God says, they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed. When the media began to pursue ministers of God and write nonsense about them, that was when they became lightly esteemed.